Hello, welcome to Careers in a Crunch. I'm your host, Arti Chandarana. The goal of my podcast is to explore many different paths that people have taken to get to where they are in their careers. As a high school student myself, I know that it's really difficult to figure out what you want to do in life. On this podcast, I talk to people from all sorts of professions, hoping to hear about their stories about their professional journey. Today I'm joined by Michael Heffner, and I'm really excited to learn more about what he does, how he got there, and what advice he has for students just like me. Once again, thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited
Yeah,
to,
thank you for
learn.
inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, I'm just gonna ask some questions, and yeah, we can get started.
Sure.
So, my first question is, what did you major in, and how did that help your career, if it did?
This is a university.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I went to Georgetown University in Washington D.C. to learn Japanese. My mother was from Okinawa, from Japan, but I grew up in a time where I think kind of exploring your identity was really not something that was largely embraced. So we didn't speak Japanese in my house, and I really felt that that was a big part of my heritage. And I wanted to learn. And I actually, Georgetown has a great study abroad program. Back then when I was going to school, it was the full year of your junior year that you would go abroad. So I kind of had this singular focus on trying to learn about Japanese language, culture, get to meet people at Georgetown who were Japanese or were interested in Japan. So, I majored in that, minored in business. I think that was sort of hedging my bet just in case. But that was the primary reason that I went to university, was to learn how to speak Japanese.
That
And yeah,
that's so interesting.
it changed my life. It changed my life. Yes.
That's super interesting. Did when you were at university, did you like achieve the goal that you were, hoping to reach of right learning Japanese?
And then some. I mean, it was like 120%, because when I was down there, Georgetown is a great place if you want to be with international students. I mean, a lot of like sons and daughters of like ambassadors and diplomats and politicians from foreign countries go there. So I got that exposure. They have the Japan Club. What do they call it now? Japan Network. And I was a president for 2 years, and I was down there, so I got to meet people, and I'm still in contact with them. I made a great network while I was there. So, I speak, I spoke Japanese, and I have to say that if I hadn't done what I did, my career on Wall Street would not have happened.
That
So I don't
is
know if that's part of your question or that's the second part of your question, but I mean, I would just offer that as a teaser.
that is amazing. That's so cool. You said that you minored in business.
Yes.
Did did you go anywhere with that, right? Did you use your business
Well,
skills?
it was the foundation. I mean, I think it was the combination. Now I'll start talking about my career on Wall Street. But back in what was it, the mid 1980s, the big concern for the Reagan administration, and this goes back some time, but was the merchandise trade deficit. Now they call it the balance of trade, but it's imports versus exports, and we're seeing that right now. I mean, the current issue with tariffs is all about the balance of trade. I mean, we are importing more. We're taking in more from places like China and Vietnam and Sri Lanka. I mean, every other country has or most countries have a surplus. With the United States, we have a deficit, which means that we're exporting less than we're importing, and they want to make that better. That's what Donald Trump is trying to do as president. Back then, Ronald Reagan, who was the president, felt that they could do that with currencies. And it's a little complicated, but I think it's important to share. So when you do that with currencies, if you can make the US dollar cheaper against foreign currencies, the idea is that maybe people would buy our automobiles or buy our beef or buy our farm produce or whatever it is that we export. And so back in September of 1985, all of the central banks got together and devalued the dollar against their currencies. And so back then you didn't have a euro. There was a Swiss franc, French franc. pound sterling, and then the dollar against the yen was also adjusted, which inflated the value, the purchasing power of the yen, and consequently, the Japanese started buying things in the United States, and one of them was securities. They started buying, fixed incomes, bonds, and stocks. And so Wall Street needed people who could speak Japanese, who could deal with Japanese counterparts who were buying, these financial instruments. And I had just come back from Japan, and I spoke Japanese, and there were very few people really on the world, like in Wall Street, who were able to do that. So at a very early age, I was able to get access and entree to Wall Street because of my skills in the language.
Wow, that
And yeah, it was serendipitous. It was lucky, good fortune. But it started my career, and it was all about my being in the right place, and then all that happening with the central banks.
that's so cool how it like right part of your culture was like incorporated into your job and just like how that worked out.
Yeah, and I have to say that I continue to stay in contact with a lot of the people that I had worked with, when I started. I kind of moved into different areas beyond just working with. Sorry about the dog. Working with just the Japanese investors, but it was sort of like I kind of use the analogy of a wave. Like on Wall Street, you can catch waves like when you're surfing, and so that was the first wave of my career. I had like maybe two or three really big waves that I was able to surf, and the first one was with the Japanese.
Wow, that's incredible. So you mentioned that was your first big wave, but you had a couple more.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think if I had limited myself to just dealing with the Japanese, my career on Wall Street would have been very short, because there was a bubble that was created from the inflation of the yen. And again, I don't want to get too complicated, but it was artificial. And so the Japanese economy went into a recession in the early 1990s. And so they stopped buying, financial securities. They stopped being a big purchaser of all of these things. And so I had to move to different clients. So I worked with European clients, and then, started working with hedge funds. And again, hedge funds are big investors and big sources of commissions on Wall Street. And so that was like the second and third wave of my career, being able to kind of use my experience with the Japanese clients and apply that to working with other clients. And I have to tell you, the Japanese clients are very, very particular, and they're very exacting about a lot of things, down to calculations. And I think other investments, um, managers, other groups of investors probably aren't as specific or exacting. And so what was interesting and useful for me is that I was applying the techniques that I had developed with the Japanese clients to these new client bases, and they were so happy and delighted with with I guess my responsibility, with my precision, um, that I was able to find success based on using those techniques I developed with the Japanese. So yeah, the foundation was laid, and again, it all goes back to pursuing something that was interesting to me personally. I mean, I was never think I could not have predicted the Plaza Accord in 1985. The merchandise trade deficit being addressed by that. When I went to Georgetown, I had no idea. I really just wanted. I was pursuing a passion. I wanted to understand my identity. I wanted to go to Japan and see my relatives. But from that, a career was developed. So, I mean, it is possible. People were telling me when I was studying Japanese, that my career opportunities were to be a teacher or a translator. That was it. There wasn't really much I was going to be able to do. But that didn't really discourage me, or persuade me to change my major. I really, did want to learn Japanese, and I just, I pursued that to the end.
Yeah, that's amazing. That that's just incredible how, you had a goal and you achieved it. You put your mind to it. So, right, as you worked with all these different people, what was what were some like challenges you faced like during that time, and how did you handle them?
I'm not going to say that I was fortunate, but I had this kind of strange career where I happened to be in a position to witness and experience some really extreme things. So my first day on Wall Street was October 19th, 1987. You know, that was way before maybe even your parents were born, but that was the day the market crashed. You can go back in history and look, but the benchmark, back then it was the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It was down like 23% in one day. As a major meltdown in the financial market. There's a lot of explanations for it, but that was my first day on Wall Street, and I had no idea what was going on. I was like, what's happening here? And I guess I was lucky that my boss said, well, come back tomorrow. I didn't know whether or not I'd be fired there. I didn't know whether or not I'd be in the job, but based on that experience, I learned a lot about tenacity. I learned about responding to a crisis. So when 9/11 happened, and again, it was September 11th, 2001, I was right across the street from the World Trade Center. So we saw the planes going in. I had to, I was the manager at the time, so I had to like get my people off the floor, get them out, and then come back the next day and try to relocate our offices somewhere in Midtown. And that was really tough because a lot of people died. There was a lot of, I mean, obviously afterwards we went to war. It was just, kind of a horrible experience. Um, but the market came back. The firm I worked with, Merrill Lynch, the offices were destroyed. We relocated, we rebuilt, we went back downtown. So we were able to persevere, overcome all of those challenging conditions, and I think that to me was again something that positioned me to actually withstand another crisis that happened in 2008. This is more of a banking crisis, but there was almost a systemic collapse in the financial markets in 2008, where banks and investment banks and investors got into trouble investing in the wrong thing. They got too exposed to the wrong assets, and then there was a big meltdown in the market back then. So I witnessed a lot of really, really kind of historic events and was able to come back and, kind of survive and help the firm rebuild in the aftermath of those crises. So, um, that I think the clients appreciated my willingness to do the hard work, because some people, after 9/11, they just like, I can't do this anymore, I'm going to quit the industry. Certainly after 2008, a lot of people just didn't want to be involved. It was just too hard. And so the willingness to continue to persevere, to help rebuild, I think um, those are lessons for life, because it's not just in your career where you're going to have challenges.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I think, yeah, the most important is like showing up after, right, everything that's happened. And I mean, that's exactly what you did. And, right, it all
But
came like
and being
back.
hopeful. I mean, I think being positive. And again, I wrote down a couple of notes here. I think, but there is power in saying yes. Yes, we can rebuild. Yes, wait, yes, we can come back. Yes, we could do this.
Yeah, having the
So
confidence to, you know, do it again, like come back.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So my next question, I had a sort of a follow up to that question, and it was, what did you learn from those challenges? You did kind of sort of describe a little, right, perseverance, right, all that. Is there like any more like in depth or like, of what you learned from those
I mean, I
challenges?
will I will use it because I was able to retire pretty early. Sometimes when you're on Wall Street and you get lucky, you can make some money. And, I mean, I think most people who are on Wall Street have a number in mind where if they hit that number, they can walk away. So for me, enough was enough, and I had made the money that I was looking for. So a few years ago, I decided to go back to graduate school, and went to Yale Divinity School for 3 years to get a Master of Divinity. And I have to tell you, that was really hard, because I hadn't been in an academic setting for about 35 years before then. So to go back and to see, I mean, when I was going to college, they didn't have computers, the internet didn't exist, libraries weren't digitized. All of these things were new. But in the current university environment, that's all accepted and expected. So to adjust to all of that was really, really hard. And I have to say, if I didn't have the experience, the prior experience of having overcome all of these obstacles, the market crash in 87, 9/11, 2008 financial crisis, it might have been easier for me to just walk away and say, I don't need to do this, it's too hard, I'm too old, whatever the excuse you can use. But I didn't, and I was able to graduate. I graduated in June of 24, so last year. And yeah, I mean, I think for me, that was something I'm quite proud of, that I was able to go back. I never really thought of myself as an academic, so to go back into something and do something as um, difficult and challenging is getting a Master of Divinity. I'm quite satisfied with what happened.
Yeah, you should be. That's so impressive. Um, you said that you went to Yale for divinity school. Was that
Yes.
like a part of your plan, or like did you, right, sort of
Mm.
have in mind that you wanted to do that, or was it kind of like a new interest, like a spark, like?
No, I mean, I have to say, I'll share with you that my father was a priest for the Episcopal Church. He was a missionary in Japan after World War II. So he went back to Japan. He was in the Navy fighting in the Pacific Theater. So after the war, he decided that he wanted to go back as a priest and to build churches and help the people, because the island of Okinawa was almost completely wiped out in 1945. So he just felt a responsibility and a need to do that. And he met my mother there. And so that's how I came to be. So I think there was always this focus on helping people, serving people. And for me, it was always sort of like a remote idea, because my father was a great man, and I just like there's no way I could fill his shoes, and there's this I had all the excuses to not do this, but I was very involved in community service and with the church. So feeding the homeless, building tiny homes for people who didn't have shelter, serving people who are hungry, mentoring, lots of stuff. Anything that was involved with the community service, I was very involved with, and that was really since I was young. And I continued to do that when I was on Wall Street. I served on boards. I was trustee and a lot of different things. And so for me, it got to a point where it just made sense that maybe I should go back and maybe learn more about the Bible and learn more about theology and learn more about other religions. Get exposed to people from different countries and different faiths. So I think it's sort of I'm very lucky in that it all fits. Because when I went to school, my sons had both graduated, so there wasn't a need for me to be around. It was in New Haven, Connecticut, so I was able to go to school, Sunday through Friday, and then come back on the weekends. So I was only away during like the weekdays, so it wasn't that disruptive. But yeah, I mean, I have to say that it sort of fit in with what I've been doing, and I'm really glad that I'm doing it now. I mean, I think justice work is probably something, advocacy, You're seeing a great need for that even now. I mean, we had a situation in this past weekend when one of your cohorts from Scarsdale High School was detained by ICE
Mm.
going to just a standard court appearance, and the ICE people were waiting in the hallway, and they detained her. They kept her at 26 Federal Plaza, and they shipped her off to Louisiana, and it took a lot of work. There was a protest I attended on Saturday. There was a lot of things, and so I guess the upside is that she was released, and there was a positive outcome. But there's a lot of people who need help, and I think I'm in a position where I can use some of my influence to help people. So yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing. You were a little league coach,
yeah.
right? And
19 years. I spent 19 years coaching. So I have two sons. So one of them was, I think William was 9 years, and James was 10 years coaching. And then I was on the little league board. They have you know got
yeah,
a committee and a board, and they control all the things with the Scarsdale Little League. So I was on that for 4 years. Yeah.
yeah. So both of your sons did played in little league.
Played all the way through, I think, freshman year in high school,
Oh
and
wow.
then William went off and he played tennis. He felt tennis was a better sport for him, and then James started doing volunteer work. So he at 16 started doing EMS, emergency medical services, and then started doing volunteer fire. And James now, the younger one, is a career fire person in the city of Stanford. So he went to Binghamton, got his degree, all this, but he pursued his dream. He's doing what he wants to do, and that's serve his community and use all of his talents and interests to help people. So I'm proud of both sons. William is doing very well. He lives in the city. He went to Yale. Graduated. I'm trying to think what he did. He did economics and screenwriting. So he's more on the media side. But yeah, I'm pleased with what's happened with both of my sons. Very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. That's amazing. Um, Now sort of going to like advice. If you could go back and give your high school self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Um, Let me think.
Yeah, take your time.
I yeah, I because I'm pretty happy with what I did. I mean, I think there was a lot of opposition to people, because I only applied to one school. When I went to university, I didn't really think about going to other universities. So my guidance counselor, my dean, was very angry with me for only applying to one school, because he's like, well, nobody goes to Georgetown from Fox, because I went to Fox Lane in Bedford. There hadn't been anybody from Fox Lane in like 15 years. And I shared with the guidance counselor that I really wasn't interested in going anywhere else. So, that's what I wanted to do. Um, I I guess maybe to be safe, I would have told my high school self to apply to a couple of safety schools just in case it didn't work out with Georgetown. Um, but I was so convinced that that was a place for me, that Georgetown is one of the few schools that has personal interviews. Now everything is the Common App, and you just put it in. But Georgetown, they insisted on having personal interviews, and I really think that I bonded so well with the person I interviewed with, that she probably wrote me a good review, and that really helped. But it was really, when I think about it in hindsight, it was really risky not to apply to more than one school. So I think taking some advice from my guidance counselor about how to game the system or how to play the system, um, probably would be some advice I would give to my younger self.
That's a good piece of advice. Yeah. And one of my last questions, or my last question actually, is what advice would you give to high school students that maybe are not only thinking of having a career like yours, but just in general?
There's a couple things, and we talked about this before. I mean, the power of yes, the power of saying yes to things where you're not really sure of the outcome, or you're not really sure if this is what you want to do. Um, just say yes. Just say yes, and like do things because that may give you the opportunity to do something else. And I have to tell you, in a corporate setting, people like to be around people who say yes. Now, I don't say like blind. I don't mean blindly saying yes to everything and just doing everybody else's work, but be saying yes, um, with discretion. So understanding, what it means to say yes to something. But I think that's important. But also learning how to tell stories. And I don't mean you know, Peter and the Wolf or Mary Had a Little. I mean, no stories about yourself or stories about events. Um, to be able to express things, to captivate people with your stories, I guess to ask questions and learn about situations so that you can create these stories, you can formulate these stories, because communication is so much a part of corporate life. I mean, being able to develop a relationship. So if you have a situation where, maybe you're in sales and you have clients, well, to engage them, you need to have something to share, and I think telling stories or being able to connect with people in certain ways is really important. Um, and then finally, so those I had 3 points. So the yes one was the one, telling stories is the second one. But also I think there is a risk in doing things just because people see you as being maybe good, or maybe it's self-serving and they want you to do something, um, and you're not really interested. I think it's important, that you have to do something out of a passion, because if you're thinking about a career that's 30 plus years doing something, and if you don't really have a passion for it, it can wear on you. Like a job can wear on you. Can affect your outlook on life. It can affect how you have a relationship with other people, and so I think it's important, to when you're doing things. Say for example, say maybe you're a good soccer player right now. And they say, oh, you should become a soccer, and you should like drop everything else and just focus on soccer. Well, I mean, as people change, maybe that's not something that you want to do. And I think it's important to sort of look at yourself, ask yourself the question, is this something that I really want and I'm really passionate about, that I want to be doing for the rest of my life? Or is it just something that, I like to be good at this, but that's as far as it goes? So I think, kind of going inside and asking yourself those questions, and then, having the courage to maybe say, yeah, this is not what I want to be doing for the rest of my life, or I don't want to drop everything else and just do that. Because, I mean, as you know, you've seen, in Scarsdale, sometimes, a sport can become a four-season sport. So you're playing baseball 4 seasons instead of just the one spring season. And I mean, it's easy to get burned out. It's easy to lose your passion. So make sure you're just checking in with yourself, asking yourself the question, is this something that I'm really passionate about, or am I doing this because somebody else is telling me that, that's what you should be doing?
Yeah, I think what you just said, it's so important for people to hear those things because I think especially right like in high school, it's like maybe you're so focused on right getting into like college and maybe you forget that it's important to do what like you're interested in and important to take those risks that maybe you think won't lead you anywhere, but in reality they might.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
being happy is important. And I don't know if people in high school ask themselves that question. I mean, am I happy? Or what does it take to make me happy?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining. This was amazing. I learned so, so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I hope the project goes well. Nice to see you, and we'll see you in the neighborhood.
Yes, thank you. That's
Okay.
it for this episode of Careers in a Crunch. If you found today's conversation helpful and informative, be sure to share it with a friend or family member. Don't forget to follow the podcast so you never miss an interview. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much. Have a great day.